I'll find his arm.
That's right, get comfy.
So, Karl,
Sure.
when was like the moment like where you felt you truly found Dredd? Was it getting dressed up and getting in a costume, and then how many times did that take you for you to find that voice and find really, I think, the greatest interpretation of the character I've ever seen?
Oh, bless you so much. Really appreciate that. That's a really good question. It was just a huge challenge and a process of discovery. When I arrived in Cape Town, we had like 2.5, 3 weeks of pre-production, and every day I would go into the studio, and even though we weren't filming, we'd do a lot of training, doing tactical training with this ex-British military guys, and I would put the uniform on, the whole uniform, and this is sweltering Cape Town summer. Because it was important to me, to get to set and put it on for the first time, and then have an adjustment period on set, because it was certainly some getting used to. But when did I really feel like Dredd? Probably first time I hopped on the Lawmaster motorbike in full costume, and I was gunning it through the streets of Cape Town at stupid speeds with the South African cops, so they blocked off the roads, like gunning down the road, all perfectly legal. That felt pretty good.
Talk about working with Olivia.
Oh, she's phenomenal. We've had such a real true partnership and a collaboration. Every day before we would go on set to do whatever it is we're going to do, we'd meet in either her room or my room, and we'd discuss what it was that we were doing that day, what our objectives were, what we didn't want to do, the pitfalls, all of that sort of stuff. And she was just 1,000% committed all the way, and it just would have been a nightmare to approach this movie with anyone who was giving less. And she trained hard, she worked hard, and she is extraordinarily brilliant in this film, and she really brings humanity and emotion, which I can't express. And it was part of her responsibility in the film. Part of it was to help key the audience into where Dredd was at, and I thought she did that exceedingly well.
What did you know about the Dredd character before the movie?
I read the comics when I was about 17 years old, and I didn't read many comics. I think it was like Frank Miller's Dark Knight and Judge Dredd. I mean, they were literally the only comics that I did read. And the really cool thing was that when I found out they were doing this adaptation, first of all, I read the script and was really pleased to see that Alex had done a terrific job of, adapting Dredd, and his version was so faithful and honourable to what Wagner created back in '75. Dredd didn't take his helmet off, and for me that had to be that way. And I met with Andrew and Alon and Alex and Pete in Los Angeles, and they were discussing the movie, and they said, "Look, you are aware there's not going to be any, Hollywood BS. The helmet stays on." And I said, "I wouldn't be taking this meeting with you if I'd have read the script and the helmet was coming on." So it was great, because right from the get-go we were on the same page. And for me, one of the really cool things about the whole process was once I was cast as Dredd, then I went back and pulled out my old comics, and then I went and bought a whole lot of new stuff that I hadn't read. And the wonderful thing was to see the evolution in Wagner's writing, and there were a whole bunch of stories that he wrote and has written in the last 10 years or so that I wasn't privy to, and really interested to see the evolution of the character and the stories that contain much more depth. And it's not just the Dredd character really starts to get to a place of questioning the big lie that it is his job to defend and protect. And so yeah, that was really cool.
Did you ever get a chance to take off the helmet on set and like have like a clown wig on or something on it?
I can tell you, I could go out and I could come into work extremely hungover and nobody would be the wiser.
Was there ever a moment where you maybe slightly regretted the helmet stays on rule?
Not once.
How did you come up?
Definitively no.
The chin in there, like you control the screen with just your chin. Like how did you get that look and that scowl? Did you practice? Did you have a technique you got to use it? Or?
No, I think where it's most effective is when I'm in the moment and what I'm reacting to is coming from the stimulus within the scene. But I mean, I certainly didn't. For me, it was really important that it be identifiable Dredd. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of the comics, but he's never drawn with a smile. He's never, you know what I mean? It's this. It's all about that old stony face kind of, and that was the challenge. I mean, it was a huge challenge for me to find out how I could convey shades of this character without the use of my eyes, and it was daunting at first because there's so much within him. He oscillates between being cold and clinical and removed, to being protective, to having his humour, his sort of sardonic, dry humour. There's also shades of compassion and humanity when he chooses when he chooses the stun setting without giving away too much on the readers. When he chooses a stun setting over a kill setting, he's doing that for a particular reason. When he becomes unhinged and when he lets the rage and the violence that within finally come out, after the massacre sequence in the film. His feelings, even his feelings about Judge Anderson and if anything, the thing that I also love about this character is that he's a constant through the film. Everybody else is changing and moving, and but he is kind of like just driving through this, and he's just solid.
Provided the movie does well, I would really hope you could come back and play this character again. And if that were to happen, would you want to do it? And what would you like to explore with Dredd in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. But I just want to say that, look, if this film is a one-off cult classic, then I'm cool with that. I'm really proud of the film, and we showed it the other night, and the audience loved it. And to me, that's like, I'm happy, I'm good. If that's all it is, if we don't end up making more of these, then I'm cool with that, because it's all good on my end. If we're fortunate enough, if it blows up at the box office, then absolutely, I would definitely love to come back and reprise the role and make more of these. I just think there's so much fertile ground to explore within the character, within the world, and I would love to see the continuing story and the evolution of these characters and the relationship between Anderson and Dredd, and it'll be interesting to find out more about the world, more about Dredd. It'd be really cool to see the Dark Judges. There's so much, and it'd be great to, like, we see one aspect, one sector of Mega City 1. It'd be good to see other aspects, and
Is there any arc or anything in some of the comics you read that you really particularly thought that this would make a...
Oh yeah, definitely. The whole Dead Man's Walk into Necropolis, I think, is fantastic. That's probably one of my favorites, along with the origin story, which kind of the story that chronicles how Mega City got the way it got, how the judges came into power. It is really, if you you didn't know Judge Dredd but you were interested in finding out, go and get a copy of Origins, because that is just the definitive sort of set-up story for Dredd, and it fills all the backstory in. And it's interesting because it was written in a period, in quite a late period of Wagner's writing, so there's a depth and a maturity in the story, which, if you go way back to his earlier writings, it was just a lot more, Dredd playing either the good guy or the bad guy, getting the bad guys,
So John Wagner, in the comics he ages Dredd in real time.
Yeah.
The character's actually like 70 now. Have you guys discussed at all, like, if this is a successful franchise the last 10, 15, 20 years, they want to have a 40, a 50, a 60-year-old Judge Dredd in the film, like in the comics?
Yeah, they've already booked me in. My 60s and 70s, I've got my schedules full. Yeah, hey, I don't know. As I said before, we're just at the point where we're releasing this film to an audience, and I honestly feel it's no longer our film. It's now yours. It's now theirs, and people embrace it. And I would love to make it.
On the set, and while you were developing it, how much of the conversation were you allowed to talk about the previous movie? Were you concerned about being different than the Stallone film, or were you just not talking about it at all?
It never was really a topic of conversation, and not because it was just not relevant. What we were doing was so tonally different that it was like, you just couldn't. I mean, you've seen them both. It was chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
I certainly, I went to the original Stallone one when it came out at the movies, and I rewatched it prior to filming Dredd. More for anything, just to see what works and what doesn't work. And I'm of the opinion that if you can learn from your mistakes, then that's one of the most important things you can do in life. If you can learn from other people's, even better.
Being curious, was there any challenges acting-wise going from mostly 2D films to filming a 3D film?
Oh yeah, there was actually. That's a really good question. Yeah, because we shot this in 3D using the Red cameras, and that's a whole different deal. Usually when you're working on film, you can get upwards of 24 shots a day. You can move the cameras around a lot easier. But when you're working in 3D, suddenly the amount of shots that you get is significantly less. You're getting 8 to 10. But within that, because it's a digital format, you can actually resize the image. You can move in. While it has certain drawbacks, it also has certain positives as well. And then, obviously, I think the quality of the image is just so superior, and that's one of the things that is really cool about this movie is the way it looks. It is at times it's just pure art. It really is. And what I personally found interesting was how it oscillates from extreme violence, and all of a sudden it's when that slow-mo hits, and suddenly it morphs into something else, which is there's a sort of a beauty in it, which is kind of sickening but at the same time scarily beautiful.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Karl.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Karl, any toys your kids are hoping for you to bring home from this? Maybe a Bruticus or some He-Man toys?
Yeah, well, I think the last time I was here, I picked up a couple of lightsabers, which